What's up, y'all? It's your man, Stephen Bartle, coming at you with another edition of Bartle's Breakdown. I'm your host, and I'm pleased to be joined by a friend and a colleague today, Eric Collins. Eric, how you doing today, my man?
Friend first and foremost, man. Doing great. Glad we're actually killing the time by doing something productive. This is good.
No, man, I wanted to get you on, Eric, because I know your background, I know your story. People in Chicago kind of know a little bit about your story, but I think you've got some fantastic turns and opportunities and things like that that we'll get into, and your perspective on things. I've always enjoyed it. You've always kept me cracking up. So I think our viewers enjoy what you have to say. So you grew up in Cleveland. Were you a born sports fan, or how'd you pick it up, Eric?
Yeah, I'm from the east side of Cleveland, Cleveland Heights, Ohio, which is like the first suburb just outside the city. Used to take me about 8 minutes to get down to Cleveland Stadium and watch the Indians play. I remember vividly when I was a kid, because my mom was a huge sports fan. My dad, not at all. My dad didn't know anything about anything. I could ask him his favorite Cleveland Brown right now, and the only one he could name would be Jim Brown, the history of the Cleveland Browns organization. So that's kind of the level of sports fan he was.
Okay.
But my mom was totally different. My mom would watch and listen to every single thing. If the Indians game or the Cavaliers game wasn't playing on the radio, that was just breaking news. That just never happened. She always knew the score at any given moment of any of the Cleveland sports teams' games. And I remember we always had dinner every night at 6 o'clock. And no matter what we were doing, you drop everything, have dinner together at 6 o'clock. And I just always cross my fingers and hope that when dinner was done at 6:35 when we were clearing the tables, that my mom would say, "Eric, let's go down to the ballpark with me." And that would happen probably 15 times throughout the course of the summer.
Wow.
So we'd leave our house at 6:45 and we'd still get there when the national anthem was just getting finished being sung. It would take us 20 minutes to get down, find a parking spot, get our tickets, and go hang out in the stands. And that was the epitome of my ideal summer day, is just going down to an Indians baseball game randomly 15 times throughout the course of the summer. That was my love for sports. It all started with baseball and the Cleveland Indians.
Wow. So what made your mom such a sports fan, Eric? Did she ever explain why she was so into sports?
My mom was from a dairy farm in Washington, Iowa, and she had two older brothers who were a lot older than she was, and she idolized them and wanted to do whatever they were doing, and they were big baseball fans, St. Louis Cardinal fans, and she just picked up her love for it there. And even though she met my dad, he was kind of a boring fuddy-duddy, she still kept her sports thing going on and passed it down to me. My sister didn't get it. My sister has no idea. She couldn't name the three sports teams that exist in Cleveland, Ohio.
Good stuff, man. I forgot to tell you guys, Eric is the play-by-play commentator for the Charlotte Hornets television. So Eric is one of the few voices of the NBA, and I just want to get that out there. You can see his Hornets paraphernalia there. So Eric, you're growing up in Cleveland. Obviously a Cleveland sports fan. You've had your share of ups and downs. I'll say that politically correct. What was it? Where was the time in growing up? Did you know that you wanted to be a play-by-play commentator?
You know what? I always knew that this is what I wanted to do, but I never really had the confidence to kind of actually tell people that this is what I wanted to do. Because, when we were kids, Steve, you got to remember, growing up a Cleveland Indians fan, you couldn't make a living doing Indians baseball because they would only have, I guess Chicago was a little bit different because WGN would do so many games. But from my experience growing up in the 70s and the 80s, there was only maybe 20 games of the entire 162 that were televised for the Indians every year. And for the NBA, maybe there was probably 12 Cavalier games that were televised. Now, there always was the radio announcer, but a career just doing nothing but play-by-play just didn't – I had a better chance of, landing on Pluto. It just didn't seem anything realistic at all. So I did want to stay kind of in the same world. I got my start by going to school and trying to get into journalism through the news background. That's kind of where I started. And that's actually where we first met back in the early 90s, is you and I are both trying to figure out our way into the business. And at the time, obviously, you were doing a lot of sports stuff, but I was more of a news reporter type of thing. And so that was kind of like my fail-safe until I realized that news was just a horrible existence and it was really hard. And I said, you know what? I love sports. I got a brain that just needs to be fueled by sports at all times. And that's when I made the switch and eventually have never looked back, starting in 1996.
Okay, so now you're growing up in Cleveland. You're thinking about going to college. You choose St. Lawrence. Why?
The only school I got into. I applied to 3 schools. I don't know what I was thinking. I applied to Stanford. I didn't get in. They laughed at me. I applied to some small school in upstate New York or upstate Maine called Bates, which was
I've heard of Bates. Yep.
Yeah, Brian Gumbo went there, and I didn't get in there either. So the only school I get into was St. Lawrence, and I figured why not? And it was my sister's older than me, and my sister's smart, and I knew what colleges were and what they weren't. I knew that St. Lawrence was a good school, and I could have fun there. And so I just sight unseen. I went to St. Lawrence and spent 4 years there, and changed my life.
Okay, in what way? And give people a sense of where St. Lawrence is and kind of how it is. Is it a smaller college? Is it bigger? Kind of
St. Lawrence is about 2,000 people, so it's itty bitty. It's a lot smaller than my high school was. I went to a big public high school, very diverse public high school, Cleveland Heights, 50-50 black, white, with a whole bunch of Jewish kids, and it was a melting pot. Is where I kind of grew up. And then I went to St. Lawrence, which is in the nether reaches of northern New York. We're talking close to Ottawa and Montreal. It doesn't get colder than that. Super small and very homogeneous. It was just a bunch of white kids, homogeneous, and it was totally different than what I experienced. And it probably would have freaked me out, and I probably would have transferred, but I happened to find 3 of the best friends in the world who are still 3 of my best friends. We're all sports aficionados. We love the same type of humor. We both love the same type of intellect, and they've been my lifelong friends, and that's how I kind of say it changed my life. I learned how to deal with these people who I really didn't have much contact with when I was growing up. And so I found myself in a totally foreign environment, and I was able to kind of make my way through it because of these 3 friends who are still my friends today.
Wow. Now, Eric, where are your friends located in the New York area? Did you guys just kind of spray out once you left St. Lawrence?
We all kind of spread out, but now they're all back in New York area. One's in Albany, one's in New York. Actually, 2 are in New York, and I'm down here south. So we've actually never lived anywhere close to each other since we graduated, but they're still all near and dear in my life. And we're on text chains every single day. And when they find something funny, they send it to me. And when they find something interesting, whatever, we all share it. And a good part of my play-by-play is just taking the texts and the thoughts that we have kind of just back and forth. And that's they say it's supposed to be broadcasting. You know, you and I, what we do is we broadcast. But at the end of the day, it's really not that broad. I'm actually thinking about a core group of 3 of my best friends, and I'm broadcasting to them. Because that's kind of my thought process is what would make them excited, because that's what makes me excited, and that's what brings out a part of my brain that I think makes our broadcast different than others. Is I'm not interested in kind of talking what they're saying in Nebraska or in Chillicothe, Ohio. I want what a certain group of people, hardcore people, want to hear, and I think I can bring that.
You know what, Eric? I want to circle back to that. You made a great point, and a lot of times we get people who are interested in getting into the business. They want to get into sports media business. You just said something was very critical. You said that you keep your 3 friends in mind when you are approaching your style in terms of calling a game. Why is that important to you?
Well, I just think you can't be everything to everyone. And I think when you try and do that, you just become like everyone else. And I think to me, that's boring. See, when you and I were kids, we were watching Keith Jackson and Jack Whitaker and Kurt Gowdy, and those guys were different, They weren't cookie cutter. And I think that somewhere at some point when television exploded and when cable exploded and when we had all these women's sports and youth sports and all of these other, non-Olympics or Olympic sports, I think we decided we needed all these broadcasters, and there are these schools that just decided, like these cookie cutter broadcasters that would come out, and everyone thought they needed to say the same thing at the same time with the same tone of voice. And I don't look like every other broadcaster. I don't sound like every other broadcaster. I don't have the same life experience as every other broadcaster. And to me, I just want to sound like me. And so I broadcast how I want to hear a game and how I speak a game normally. And that's with my 3 best friends. When I get together with my buddies and we're sitting on the couch in the basement or we're sitting in a bar and just talking about the game, this is the way that we talk. And this is the terminology that we use.
Yep.
And to me, I'm interested by that. And I'm hoping that other people are interested by that, as opposed to me just saying, bouncing ball right side, picked up by the second baseman over the first baseman. That does nothing for me. I want to do it my own way. And by using my friends as a knowledge and sounding board, that helps me get into that frame of mind.
For those that are wanting to go into the business, that is some of the best information and wisdom that you're going to hear, in terms of, you're talking to somebody that's at the highest level of his profession in the NBA as a play-by-play commentator, and he's giving you some specific insight. So don't lose that. All right, so you graduated St. Lawrence. Did you go right to Syracuse and get your master's, or was that later?
I did. I knew that everyone in my family, my mom, my dad, and my older sister, they all have advanced degrees, and that was just something that was kind of expected in my house.
Okay.
And to be perfectly honest with you, I was not exceedingly motivated to kind of go get a job. I kind of knew I was in a sweet spot in my life that, I didn't have a lot of responsibility, and there were grants, and I was a smart enough guy that I was able to kind of play the system and get a lot of my graduate school paid for. So I went straight to Syracuse, and that's where I kind of met some people who were like me and who wanted to get into the television world. And that was my first step after leaving undergrad, was the Syracuse thing. And I usually don't like to tell people. I hope no one in Syracuse sees this, but I went to Syracuse, but I don't consider myself a Syracuse broadcaster. I'm a St. Lawrence guy. I'm a Cleveland Heights guy. Yes, I went to Syracuse, and Syracuse has been good to me because it's been great to network, and I met a lot of people over the years. But the Syracuse brand of a broadcaster, to me, that's one of the things that's wrong with the business nowadays, is you just can't have the same type of person from the same exact background call all of these games. It needs to be different. It needs to be all of these different minds and different thought process and different ways of life to call games. That's what it used to be, and I feel like we kind of lost that.
Great point. And it's funny that we've lost that, Eric, because we have so many more opportunities, it seems. You talk about women's sports, youth sports, the Olympic sports, which you are quite involved in, and we'll get to in a second. But I like what you're saying. Very well said. So you leave with a master's degree from Syracuse. Did you come right to Chicago, or were there some stops in between?
I went right to Chicago. Usually when you finish and you want to get into television, as you know, you can either go to a small market, if you're lucky enough for someone to give you a job, and kind of learn by making your own mistakes. I decided that I wanted to go to a big market, and I wanted to just get a job somewhere on the ground floor and learn from other people who actually knew what they were doing, and actually build contacts through that. And it wasn't easy. I waited 2.5 years. This is back in the early 90s, so we're talking old school handwritten letters and typed letters and snail mail and phone calls and leaving messages on answer machines. But this is when you came into my life. You and I would go to social events where there were social networking events, and we would meet people and pass out cards, and you'd follow up the next day with a letter saying, hey, it's great to meet you. If there's ever a chance we can get together, I'd love that. And after about 2.5 years, that paid off into an opportunity as a low-level, non-union field producer at WMAQ, which is the NBC affiliate in Chicago. A couple of guys took interest in me. Warner Saunders, who was the biggest mentor I've ever had in my life. Art Norman was big in my life. But they brought me in, and I was in the news department, and every single day I would just show up, and it's amazing how much work there is for someone who's willing to go out and do it. And the assignment editor would say, Eric, Mayor Daley is talking. We need you to go get some sound. So I'd run out with a veteran photographer, and I'd go out and stick my microphone in the pack, and there'd be Paul Meineke and Phil Walters and all these others great, producer reporters over the years in Chicago doing their work, and I was in this mix watching them and learning from them. And then we had downtime because it's TV. There's always downtime in TV.
Yep. And
I would pull someone aside, Derek Blakely aside, and say, hey, why'd you ask this question? Or, why did you phrase it this way? Or what were you thinking about when you told your photographer to get this piece of video? And it was amazing how much I learned in just 1 year of being in a newsroom and having access to all of these smart people who were at the top of their profession.
Yeah, but see, you were smart enough, Eric, to ask questions and humble yourself. A lot of people don't want to go that route, and so I commend you for doing that. So, where in the process did you get a chance to do? Were you working with the Bulls?
Well, that came later. See, after I was at Channel 5 for a year, I was still on the news track, and I was going to be a news reporter. And I thought I was going to kind of change the world and, right the wrongs of the world.
Uh-huh.
And after about a year, Warner Saunders, who was my mentor, he was the main anchor at Channel 5, and just an absolute brilliant, dear man. He wrote me a note and put it in my mailbox, and it said, young eagles must learn how to fly. And actually, I still have it right over there, a little note. And that meant I was no longer allowed to work for him anymore, and I needed to go out and get my own job. And basically, he needed to replace me with someone else. His big thing was, Eric, don't just jump over a fence, but bring someone over a fence with you. So he had already jumped the fence, and he brought me over with him, and he was looking to bring over someone else. So it was my turn to leave. So because I had Chicago on my resume, and because I had, spent a year doing all of this wonderful stuff at the NBC affiliate in Chicago, all of a sudden I became very marketable, and it was relatively easy for me to get job opportunities to be a reporter.
Okay.
So I got offered jobs in Rochester, Syracuse, Champaign, and I want to say like Augusta, Georgia. And I chose Rochester, New York, because it was the biggest market, and it was actually relatively close to some of my friends. So I left Chicago, and I went to Rochester, New York, and I took a job as a news reporter, covering city council meetings, covering, homicides and arsons, and it was tough, man. And I wasn't very good at it. And after about a year, I called Warner Saunders, and I said, Warner, this is what I expected. I can't imagine doing this for the next 40 years. This is not who I am. And he said, Eric, who are you? And I said, I'm in sports, but I thought it's too hard to get into sports. And he said, follow your bliss. Follow your bliss, Eric. If you want a job, you find someone who's got the job that you want. You call them. You say, how do you get to the job? I said, okay. So that moment, I hung up with Warner, and I picked up the phone, and I went to the old Yellow Pages, and I found the number for the minor league baseball team in Rochester, New York. And I called up, and I said, hey, partner, I live here in town. I want to do what you do. How did you get into the business? And he said, well, da-da-da-da-da. Oh, by the way, I'm looking for a partner. Do you want to go have a beer tonight? And maybe we'll hit it off, and maybe we can do something.
Wow.
So that night, I went out, and I had some chicken wings and a beer with a guy named Glenn Geffner. And we tossed some trivia questions back and forth, and we seemed to enjoy each other's company. And he said, I can't give you much, but I can pay you $25 a game if you want to be my partner this year. And I said, sure. And so I left my apartment. I moved into my buddy's house. I lived on his floor because I couldn't afford any rent. And I spent the summer doing minor league baseball games with the Rochester Red Wings in 1996. And that's the start of my sports career. When it ended, that season ended, I was going to go back to Chicago just to make some money. And I figured I'd get my job back doing some level at Channel 5 or whatever. I thought Warner would kind of take care of me. And Warner said, I got something better for you. And Sports Channel Chicago was looking to hire someone. And I got hired like on the spot in September of 1996 to cover the Bears. And because I was in Chicago covering the Bears, the biggest thing, of course, was Michael Jordan and the Bulls, and we needed all hands on deck. And so while I was there, he said, Eric, the Bears aren't as important as Michael and Scotty. Get over here. So I started working and covering the Bears and the Bulls as well.
Okay. So, and you know what? You had a lot of patience and determination to get through some of those things because you did some work with the Schaumburg Flyers as well.
I did.
Baseball team. So you worked with 2 or 3 different minor league baseball teams?
I worked 1 year in Rochester with Rochester Red Wings. That was 1996.
Right.
And I moved to Chicago, and I did a lot of stuff, Sports Channel, which became Fox Sports.
Yep.
As with the Bulls. But while I was doing that, I was a sideline reporter, and I was a pregame host, and I was a postgame host. And I knew I didn't want to do that forever. I knew I wanted to be a play-by-play guy. And I knew that I was always thinking about what would make you happy, Eric, when you're 50. And I knew that there was no one who's going to hire me to be a sideline reporter when I was 50. I just knew it. It's a younger person's gig. Craig Sager kind of broke the mold. He did it, but there's only one Craig Sager.
That's right.
I didn't feel confident. I said, I wanted to be the play-by-play guy, because you look at play-by-play guys, and in our lifetime, they're all old guys, you know? They're like,
they've been doing it for decades. Yeah.
You can get old being play-by-play.
Yeah, yeah.
So I said, that's what I want to do. And I thought that my personality fit that as well. So even though I was doing sideline reporting for the Chicago Bulls and having an opportunity to work with the Cubs and the White Sox, I asked my bosses, I said, I want to do more play-by-play. And when they had none for me, I said, well, I want out of my contract then. And so when the Schaumburg Flyers started, they allowed me out of my contract for every summer, all 4 months of the summer, to go to Schaumburg Flyer baseball games.
Wow.
And so I spent 3 years. Well, you got to remember, so during the winter months, I would travel with the Bulls on the teams playing and stay at, 5-star hotels. And then the season would end, and I would go over to the Schaumburg Flyers, where we would bus everywhere, and we would stay 2 and a man in some motel on the side of the road in Bismarck, South Dakota. So I had 2 extremes in my life. But to be perfectly honest with you, the best part of my year was the summer when I was doing minor league baseball games, because I was doing play-by-play, and I was getting closer to what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
So you were heavily involved in the glory days of the Bulls with Jordan and Pippen were running the show. Can you explain how important that time was for you in terms of getting into the business and making relationships? Because I'm going to tie it all together, but how important was that for you?
Well, I wouldn't say I was heavily involved. I was there. The Bulls had already won 4 championships before I was even back in Chicago.
Okay.
So I always felt like I was the last man at the party, but I was definitely there. I was the person who would interview Michael after every game, right in the middle of center court at the United Center, or on the road. I'd interview him in the hallway right outside the locker room, which was an absolute thrill. There wasn't anyone more professional than he was. For someone who was in such huge demand, Michael Jordan was handled it with a grace like I can't imagine anyone else handling what he had on his plate. So the experience of being around Michael, being around Scotty and Dennis Rodman and all those guys, it blew me away because of people who don't remember. We're talking 25 years ago. Whatever you think the Warriors have been over the last 5 years, whatever you think about, the New York Yankees with their nothing. It all pales in comparison. What the Bulls were doing was, we were staying in the same hotel one time with the Rolling Stones, Keith Richards, Mick Jagger. They were all there at the Vancouver Four Seasons one time. Okay. But forget this. They were in the lobby holding court. I saw Keith Richards. He had like a crowd of like 6 or 8 people around him. The minute Michael walked around the hallway and started coming out of this area, all the Keith Richards was by himself. He might as well have been like the 5th grade era. No one cared about him at all. He was a little punk standing over in the corner, and Michael was everyone's interest. So being around that was super special and something that I'll never forget. I never really took much advantage of it. I just kind of absorbed it and was thrilled that I was there. And I wasn't the guy who was going to all the parties, and I wasn't looking for access. I just was trying to do my job and do my thing.
Well, and so you were involved in the sideline reporting there, but Eric, I mean, you've done College World Series, softball, right? Mm-hmm. You've called the Los Angeles Dodgers baseball.
Yeah.
You've done Olympic sports.
I did the 2008 Beijing Olympics. I did baseball.
So you did Olympics and baseball. Yeah. You've covered football for Big Ten Network and Fox.
With you?
Yes, they covered basketball on Fox and Big Ten Network, and now you're covering the NBA. Did you ever think that your career would encompass so many different sports and opportunities?
Well, it's kind of by necessity. It's because when I went all in and said I wanted to do play-by-play, this was in 2002. In 2002, I was still doing sideline reporting, pre-games, all that other kind of stuff. And I said, I don't want to do this. I wanted to be play-by-play. And no one would hire me. The phone would ring and people would say, hey, we got an opportunity if you do sideline here or to host this. And I said, no, play-by-play. That's what I want to do. And the phone didn't ring. And I spent almost a full year without anyone offering me anything worthwhile to do play-by-play. And when it did start to trickle in, people were asking me to do, the first thing I got, and actually the game changer, was NFL Europe. NFL Europe was the thing back then, and I sent over to Berlin and Amsterdam, did games there. But when I came back, the things that I was getting was women's sports, girls' sports, high school sports, bench pressing competitions. I was doing anything just to make sure that I could keep the dream alive. Yep. And I was not going to be choosy. If someone was offering me money to do play-by-play of something that had a ball and they were keeping score, I was going to do it. And that's how I kind of stumbled into the world of women's softball, which I've adored and has been great to me and I've had a great relationship with. I just didn't say no, because to me, competition is competition. And I don't care if you're a 15-year-old girl playing high school basketball at two topless, If you're keeping score, I want to be there talking about it.
That's right.
And that's kind of the way that I felt. And because of that, I was able to work all 4 seasons. I was able to work during the spring, during the summer, during the fall, and during the winter because I could do any single sport. And that's helped me because there's not a lot of guys who have done Major League Baseball and the NBA. It's for some reason you got NBA guys and you got baseball guys. So I got lucky to be in both worlds.
And, when I want to be honest with you, bro, because my dad is a Los Angeles Dodgers fanatic. And so when you got the opportunity to call Dodgers games, man, he was so happy for you, happy for the Dodgers situation. How was that? I mean, because you and I, man, we're old school. Baseball means a lot to us.
Right.
It means a lot to me. How was it to have that opportunity to call those Dodgers games?
I told you before, I'm a big Cleveland Indians guy, and the Indians are who I am. But because I was an Indians fan and the Indians were just so bad back in the 70s, one of the teams that became my enemy was the Dodgers, or was the Yankees. And so the Yankees back in 77 and 78 would play the Dodgers in the World Series back-to-back years. And I became a huge Dodger fan because they were playing the Yankees. I needed them to beat the Yankees. I hate the Yankees. The Yankees beat the Indians. So I knew, Dusty Baker and Reggie Smith and Steve Garvey and Ron Say and, Kenny Landreau and Davey Lopes and all that. So I was a huge Dodger fan. If I wasn't an Indians guy, I was a Dodger fan. And you always can romanticize about the Dodgers, too, because they play with palm trees.
Sure.
Beautiful Dodgers.
Chavez Ravine.
Oh, and the script Dodgers, it's at such an angle. It's perfectly placed on the uniforms. The uniforms have never changed. And if you go back in history, if you think about Roy Campanella and, Joe Black and Don Newcomb and Jackie Robinson, the people of color, the Dodgers mean something even more.
That's right.
So I've always been a Dodger fan at the core. And getting an opportunity to do Major League Baseball was awesome. And getting an opportunity to work for the Dodgers is, you got the Yankees. I'll give them. They're above them. Yep. And then maybe the Red Sox and the Cubs are kind of on the same plane as the Dodgers. But the Dodgers are one of the preeminent organizations in all of sports.
Agreed.
Start with that team. It's not like I was, no problem. I apologize to Kansas City Royals. This is the Kansas City Royals. This is royalty of Major League Baseball. And to get an opportunity to do 5 seasons with them was pretty cool.
That's tremendous, man. And so now you kind of transition and you're doing Big Ten Network, Fox stuff during the fall and winter, and you're doing the Dodgers in the summer. And then you get this opportunity. You were telling me about it. And by the way, Eric and I were partners with the WNBA Chicago Sky, which I
give it up to the Chicago Sky. Give it up to the Chicago Sky.
I absolutely love that gig, man. That's what
Ellie Quigley.
I'm telling you.
Saluting.
Yeah, man. I love the Sky. I love calling the games with you. So, we're sitting there, and you're talking to me, and you give me a heads up that there may be an NBA opportunity that took place. Why don't you walk our viewers through how all that transpired and how that came about?
Well, this was 2015, and in the NBA, it's very rare when you get a change as a play-by-play announcer, because for some reason these guys, and I say guys because literally it is all men, they stay seemingly for decades. And sometimes when there is a job opening, really it's not even a job opening because they've got someone waiting in the wings. Or maybe they're going to move the radio announcer over to TV. Or maybe someone who's been involved in broadcast some other way as the sideline reporter or the pregame host is going to get elevated. Sure. So when you actually find out that there is a job that is truly open and they're really looking for an announcer and they're going to go a nationwide search to find that announcer, you get excited for someone like me because that's a real opportunity.
Sure.
And these things happen during the spring and in the summer. And of course, we're working doing Chicago Sky games together. And my agent called me up and said, Eric, the Charlotte Hornets are looking for an announcer. Would you be interested in doing the job if for some reason it became something that they wanted you as well? And I said, my God, I would do any NBA team, no matter where. If that NBA team in Timbuktu, I would do it. The NBA is only 30 of those gigs.
Yeah.
And so they flew me down, and I said to myself, you know what, Michael Jordan owns that team, and I was never buddy with Michael, not in the least, I treated him with respect and professionalism, but that was it. I would not say that, we were buddies. You're more buddies than I am. So when I went down in that room and I auditioned, I didn't audition, but I just interviewed, and I knew the biggest thing that I did when I got in the room was I played up the 20 years before. I was the sideline reporter for Michael Jordan. I knew Michael back then, big fan of Michael Jordan, da-da-da-da-da. And I just knew that there was no one in the world who had the resume that I had, who was as good as what I am, who was going to look for that job. And I just knew it. I went back and I saw you the next day and I said, Bardo, man, I usually don't talk much about that kind of stuff. And I said, Bardo, I think this is going to happen. I'm so excited. And it did happen. So very thrilled.
It was tremendous, man, because, for me, having a partner that gets a call to the NBA like that, I mean, we're on a high level, right? I mean, you were on the highest level with the Dodgers, but we're on a high level in terms of Big Ten Network and Fox. But I almost think that the NBA, when you get one of those jobs, is so coveted. And the fact that Michael Jordan and your relationship from 20 years before played into you getting this opportunity, I mean, that had to feel great, didn't it?
That's what it was. I have no doubt because Michael is such a hands-on guy, and it's his organization, and he gets a chance to get final say on everything. And he comes from a loyal place. He was with the Chicago Bulls, and the Bulls for many, many years have been seen as a loyal organization where they take time with their people, and they build their people, and they work with their people. And I was appreciative of the fact that, Michael remembered me from when I was a kid, and I was trying to do my work to the best of my ability. And like I said, there's a lot of people who asked him for things over the years, and a lot of people needed things. I was just happy to do my job and move forward, and the fact that you remember my professionalism, that meant a lot to me, I'm not looking for a new friend. He's not looking for a new friend, but I'm thrilled the fact that he remembers that I was a professional. That's really what I wanted at the end of the day.
And says there's a good lesson in that because people are always watching. You never know who's watching your performance, your body language, and how you treat people. And I can honestly say that Eric is always prepared, always energetic, loves the job that he's doing, and he treats people the right way. I'll share a story. I had a little mentee with me one time that was at the game, and this young man really wanted to get into the business and doing his thing, and he kept putting his face in the phone during the game. And Eric, being the gentleman that he is, he taps me on the shoulder. He says, Steven, do you mind if I say something to Kyle? Because I could tell Eric was agitated. And I said, Eric, get in his ass, seriously. And so Eric was very professional, but he said, Kyle, the game is out here. Get off your phone. You can't do anything on your phone while the action is going. Pay attention to the action that you can get on your phone afterwards. And I loved it because I love when adults getting young people behind. Because we all needed it, right? We're no different, Eric. We needed that reprimand. We needed that reminder of why you're here. And I think that that was a tremendous message for Kyle. And I know he's in college now doing his thing, but I hope that it resonates. But it was I loved it because it showed me, Eric, that you care about young people, but you're also about your professionalism. And there was something about that situation. Do you remember that situation?
I do remember that situation. You were always, obviously, we talked earlier about Warner Saunders, don't just climb over the fence, bring someone with you. You've always practiced that since the day that I first met you. And I always really respect you because of that. And to have access to someone like yourself, to have access to a great event like we did with the Chicago Sky and the WNBA, and to not take advantage of it, and to not just say, this is going to be the most important thing in my life, sitting 2 hours next to Stephen Bardo and 2 hours and watching the best women in the world play basketball. That's something that I just felt like he needed to understand. It's like, hey, this is it. Everything else can wait. This is your life now. This could be your life in the future. Take advantage of it. And even if you're not the smartest guy in the room, as long as you pretend like you're paying attention, to me that counts for something. I graduated college because of that. Sometimes I had no clue what was going on. But you show up to class, you pretend like you're interested, and you move on. That's kind of the way the world runs.
That's right. No, it was a great lesson. I was so glad that you were able to impart that on him. And, for us, trying to pull these youngsters like Warner Saunders, who, is a giant of a man. For those that don't know, Warner Saunders was the lead news anchor for NBC Chicago for decades, Eric. Is that right?
Decades, no doubt about it. Since probably the early 80s. 25 years probably.
And he was always reaching back, trying to help people, always had a kind word for somebody. He's just he's a guy that had great stature. He's about 6'3", 6'4", isn't that right, Eric?
He's a big man,
Yeah.
6'6" maybe. He played for the Harlem Globetrotters for a spell back in the day.
That's right. So he was a hooper, but he was just this distinguished gentleman. And, him reaching back is something that, obviously for Eric and I is very important. Eric, I'm going to transition a little bit as we're wrapping up here a little bit. I got a few more questions. I'm curious to see what you think about the way the game in the NBA is played now compared to what it was maybe 15, 20 years ago. It's all pace and space right now. It seems like every team runs almost the exact same thing as compared to when we were coming up. Cleveland had a certain style. Utah had the pick and roll. Denver would get up and down. The Lakers had the showtime. The Celtics had a situation that they would play. The Pistons had a different style. Can you talk about the difference in the way the game is played in today's NBA?
You know what? It's kind of strange, and I know this is college, but I was watching a couple of days ago on CBS in lieu of the NCAA tournament. They had the championship game from '82 between Patrick Ewing's Georgetown Hoyas and Michael Jordan, Sam Perkins, James Worthy's North Carolina Tar Heels. Mm-hmm. And it was almost unwatchable, man. Like guys who had a wide open 16-footer and just be pump fake and pass it, pump fake and pass it. Come on. I think the three-pointer has just absolutely it's basketball looking back is unwatchable. Basketball now, I think, is you see the athleticism of the players. You see just the otherworldness of their skill level. And to me, like you, Steven, I would have loved to seen you and the Flying Illini play the way they play now with a wide open floor, Mm-hmm. Nick Anderson bombing from three, you and Kendall from the wings with all this open spot and running and dunking, It would have been so much fun as opposed to keep packing it in and worrying about who's got the better 12-footer. Mm. I love the way the NBA is played now. I just – sometimes it's frustrating. I don't necessarily love to me, Houston maybe is a little bit overboard. I do think there is.
I agree.
There is something, in an elbow jumper. Every once in a while, you can do that. There are nothing but threes and layups. Yeah. But I think for the most part, I love games that are played in the 115s to the 120s. I think there's enough scoring. I think there's enough dunking. I think that there's enough. I can't do it that makes you happy. And it's one of those things where that's one of the reasons why I love women's softball. Believe it or not, women's softball has got that huge I can't do it factor. When guys watch women's softball and they see some woman throw it 75 miles an hour, like, I can't throw that. And then when someone hits it, they say, I can't hit that, So that's what makes sports sometimes really cool. And when you watch, like, swimming, say what you want about swimming, there's never that I can't do it factor. People are like, well, if I really tried hard enough, maybe I could probably, get faster and maybe, But with the NBA, the way that they play nowadays, there's an I can't do it factor, just because it's all about above the rim and from 35 feet away. You know, these huge long shots, the crisp passes. I'm sold. It's not just because I'm in the NBA. I think it's a good brand of basketball. And I think with some tweaks, which I think the NBA will do in the years to come, like maybe that Elam ending that we saw at the end of the All-Star game, you know, maybe some different ways to kind of end the game, maybe where we don't have as much stoppage or as much fouls, or we figure out a different way. The NBA has been very open to changes for the betterment of the league. And I think the league right now is hot, and I think it's going to get even better.
I agree. And your color analyst is Dell Curry, correct?
Yeah.
How is that working with Dell Curry? And now he's got not one but two sons who are balling out of control in the NBA. How is that working with Dell?
It's pretty cool. He he welcomed me from the get-go. I've been with him 5 years, and he's just an absolute gentleman. It's hard to believe, but he is the Hornets all-time leader in two categories: 2-point field goals made and turnovers. Yeah, believe it. One of the all-time greatest shooters. Because he played back in your era, Stephen, when they didn't understand.
That's right.
More than two.
That's right.
So
that's right.
He actually, when he retired, he was 8th all-time in three-pointers made. He's now like 62nd. Just shows you how the game has changed.
Yeah.
But learning the game through his eyes and learning shooting and form and rhythm through his eyes with the way that he's able to break down and critique ball players, I think is really kind of cool. And obviously his history here in Charlotte speaks for itself. And so helping me get acclimated and just kind of become a Charlottean has been really cool with him by my side.
For you youngsters that don't know who Dell Curry is, that's Steph Curry's father. So when you watch Steph Curry play, in my opinion, Steph's handle was better than Dell. Oh. But in terms of the pure, this right here, Dell Curry was he's top 5 in my book ever.
In terms of like the look of it, or in terms of the result?
In terms of result, Eric, I mean, he would get it up so fast in the shooting pocket and get it off so quickly because he didn't jump a lot. But what's Dale, 6'6", 6'7"?
I think 6'5", 6'6", yep.
6'5", 6'6", so he got good size. He could get it off quickly. He didn't jump a lot.
Smooth.
Huh?
He was very smooth.
Oh, very, very smooth. Great, great shooter. And so when you see Seth and Steph today, they're taking after their father. Now, they're taking it to the next level. Obviously, their handles, they can get where they want to on the floor. They're very creative. But their dad was a sharpshooter. And I know Dale a little bit, a gentleman, a great guy, a man of faith. And I know you were telling me a lot of times where he'll just go back to his room and watch his sons play. It's almost like he gets done with the game, and they're on the West Coast. You guys are typically on the East Coast, so he gets a chance to watch his sons. Is he kind of giddy sometimes before being able to watch them play?
It's pretty cool. It's no matter what he's doing, he drops everything and he will watch either one of his sons when they're playing. At home, he's got multiple TVs set up, and it could be game number 37 out of 82. It could be whatever, Dallas against Atlanta, and he will make sure that he will watch the entire 48 minutes. It's amazing. And he did the same thing for Sedale. He's got a daughter who played volleyball at Elon.
Oh, okay.
Not too far away from Charlotte.
Okay.
And never missed the game, was always there. And that's something that's pretty cool as, a father of 2 young daughters. He set the bar pretty high, but I'm going to try and follow in that regard as well.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Any funny stories about being in the Charlotte organization and, you coming in and now you're a mainstay, but is there any kind of funny stories that you can share with us?
Well, what I will say, because this needs to be said, is you and I have been in this business, for 25 years, Stephen, and you and I have worked together, and we're the same age, and we both have the same experience of being young pups and now kind of being in the middle of the pack.
Yep.
There's one thing about having your predecessor, show appreciation. And sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. I came here to Charlotte, and there's a guy named Steve Martin who is truly the only person that Hornets fans had ever heard call a game. Mm-hmm. Steve Martin was the voice when they originally started in 1988, and he actually went with the team when they were down in New Orleans for a handful of years. He was the TV guy. He was a radio guy. 1 year he actually was the PA announcer. So Steve Martin was huge for 30 years doing the Hornets games. When I came in, Steve moved from TV to radio. And for 3 years, he was the radio announcer when I was the TV announcer. And everywhere that he went, and remember, he couldn't listen to me because when I'm on the air, he was on the air. But everyone would say, what do you think about the new announcer? And he goes, I love Eric. Eric's a great guy. Eric is going to be sensational. He's got everything that we want, da-da-da-da-da. Now, remember, he'd never heard me, and he didn't have to say that, you know? Mm-hmm. And he did. And my transition from Chicago to here, you know, when no one knew who I was, and people didn't understand my style because I sounded differently than Steve. But the fact that he accepted me and made it clear that I was part of the organization and I should be accepted made my path so much easier. And I tip my cap to him and forever thankful for him kind of greasing the skids and allowing me to at least try and get a foothold here in Charlotte.
Oh, man.
It doesn't happen often. So when it does happen, it needs to be acknowledged. He was an absolute wonder in terms of the welcome that he gave to me.
Oh, that's wonderful. Because, you know, Eric, in these competitive situations, typically that doesn't happen. So
No.
That says a lot about that man's character, for sure. So our viewers, where can they find you on social media? Where can they follow you?
This is it, man. I stay away from social media, man.
Huh? You don't have one social media account, Eric?
I do not. My friends know how to find me. They hit me up. They send me text messages. Text messages and email and snail mail. That's the way I operate.
I love it. I love it. I'll
be honest with you, Stephen. It's by design. You know, I got into this business because I felt like I had a voice. Like I wanted to say something to people, and I still do. And sometimes I get feedback. And I was on Twitter, and and sometimes that feedback is not creative. It doesn't help me get where I want to go. It makes me self-edit sometimes. You know, if there's someone out there that tells me, oh, Eric, I don't like it when you do this, or Eric, this bothers me when you do this, or Eric, I think you suck when you do this. I don't want that thought in my head, you know. And I know you're a Division I athlete. You played in the NBA, and you've done a lot of different things, Stephen. You obviously got a different brain than I have. Maybe you have the competitive edge that I don't. But I don't need someone else's thoughts coming in my head. I'm good giving it out. I don't necessarily like having feedback coming in. So that's just the way that I chose to do business.
No, but see, I think that's smart, Eric, because Twitter to me could be utilized for good, but a lot of times it's not. It's very negative. And the feedback that you get on Twitter is from some dope sitting at home that can't run and chew gum at the same time, but have a critique about your work. And so I agree with you on that. I utilize Twitter for business purposes, as you know, because I've gotten in trouble on Twitter as well, running my damn mouth. But I love that you are not on social media. I mean, that makes you stand out and makes you one of a kind, like you've always been to me. So I really appreciate this, Eric. You taking the time out, man. Do you have any sense of when the NBA might return?
Yeesh. My only sense is I think it is going to return. I think that there is going to be. Obviously, it all depends on what happens, you know, globally. And obviously, we need everyone to get healthy and put ourselves in good positions. But I know that the NBA desperately wants to finish off this year, and that's something we can cross our fingers for. And I think it would be a really tough pill to swallow if the regular season and the postseason just ended and we had to kind of start forward, 8 months from now without ever coming to any kind of conclusion this year. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I think that the NBA is going to try and move heaven and earth to get games played to finish off the 19-20 season. So it's something that we can look forward to.
Okay. Well said, my man. Well, Eric, thanks so much for joining us, man. I really appreciate it. We'll have to maybe check in with you a little bit later this summer once the NBA is back up and running.
All right, let me know next time this thing's going to be on camera. I didn't realize it, man. I would have dressed the occasion.
That's Eric Collins. I'm Stephen Barlow. That'll do it for this edition of Barlow's Breakdown. Make sure you come back to the page because we'll have interviews like this. I'll be going live, and we're going to get through this quarantine, this coronavirus kind of shelter in together. So take care, be safe, do the safety protocols, and check in on those loved ones that may be by themselves because we all need connection during this time. Until next time, We'll see you. Peace.